Everyone needs compassion, love that's never failing. Let mercy fall on me.
Open your Bibles, 2 Timothy chapter 3. Second Timothy chapter 3. Let me read the first 5 verses. But realize this, that in the last days difficult times will come. Men will be lovers of self, lovers of money, boastful, arrogant, revilers, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy, unloving, malicious gossips, without control, haters of good, treacherous, reckless, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, holding to a form of godliness, although they have denied its power. Avoid such men as these. On June 30th, 2013, 43-year-old Eric Marsh was superintendent of the Granite Mountain Hotshots, and they emerged from their sleep at their fire station in Prescott, Arizona. There was a poster that hung in their situation room that they looked at every day. And it asked the question, how is your situational awareness today? At 5:40 that morning, Marsh and his crew of 19 firefighters headed toward Yarnell. It's about an hour south of Prescott. And while fighting the fire, Marsh and his team found themselves in a basin walled in on 3 sides by these granite boulders. It was dangerous because it offered no means of escape. In fact, I want you to watch. Land's going to play this real short clip from the news about this that happened. An interview that this guy, he was too good a wild land firefighter to have led his team into that situation, yet he did. Now, we'll probably never experience a fire like Eric and his team did that day, but at some point in our lives, we will experience a personal trial that burns just as hot. Many of us have been burned with the loss of something forever. Maybe a broken relationship that'll never mend. Maybe a missed opportunity that we can never regain. Maybe a reputation that's been charred. But here's the point. Every one of us have scars from burn marks in life. Some scars are bigger than others. And you know what? I mean, every one of us smell like smoke. And there's this cultural fire that seems to be threatening to consume everything that's godly in our society. And the poster that question that's hanging in Eric Marsh's situation room is just, I don't know about you, but it's haunting to me. How is our situational awareness? Or maybe we should put it this way. How is our spiritual awareness? Our scripture reading here in 2 Timothy 3, Paul warned us of this coming moral decline. I mean, it's kind of, I guess today would say, Paul is saying, you know what, you better buckle up because things are about to really get bad in the last days. I mean, you look there in verses 2 through 5 of all of those traits, and that sounds so much like our world today. And I want you to notice, it's very interesting to me how it begins, lovers of self. And one author put it this way, he said that lovers of self was kind of the sewer pipe of which all these other ungodly traits flowed through. In fact, psychiatrists will tell us that we are living in the most narcissistic society ever. And to give you an example of that, most everyone has a social media page that points where? Look at me. Look at my accomplishments. Look at what I've done. What did Paul mean here by in the last days? You know, as soon as Jesus ascended into heaven, that clock started ticking toward the date of His second coming. And although none of us know exactly where we are on that timeline, we do know that countdown has begun. So in that sense, you know, we are living in the last days as we await the return of Christ. And Paul describes these present days as difficult. If you have a King James, I think the word used is perilous, which literally means extremely violent. And I think most of us would agree that this world is no longer the place that it used to be. I mean, our world is so far removed from where we remember it was as children. And you know, it's kind of hard to imagine sometimes how things have just seemed to, they spiraled out of control so quickly. Turn for a minute to a verse in the book of Isaiah chapter 60. We'll turn over there, Isaiah chapter 60. While you're turning there, let me tell us one other thing about this word, perilous or difficult, that's found here in 2 Timothy. It's also found in Matthew chapter 8, verse 28, the exact same word that was used to portray that demon-possessed man that Jesus came in contact with. That he was extremely violent. But what's interesting about that story to me is that Jesus didn't retreat from that danger. Instead, He encountered that demon-possessed man. I mean, what terrified other people and made them hide is exactly what caused Jesus to go into action. And you know, I can't help but think of this year, of 2020, you know, have we been hiding in fear or living in faith? Look here in Isaiah 60 now. Look at the first three verses. And really just these first two words in the New American Standard, arise, shine. For your light has come. The glory of the Lord has risen upon you. For behold, darkness will cover the earth, and deep darkness the peoples. But the Lord will rise upon you, and His glory will appear upon you. Nations will come to your light. We knew that. We understood that this year, didn't we, with all the malls? Yeah, you don't remember? We thought that was the worst thing that was going to happen in 2020. Little did we know. Arise and shine. That's the challenge. In this time of darkness in our world, God is giving us as Christians an opportunity to arise and shine and make a difference. This situational awareness, I think, requires a lot of wisdom. And the Bible tells us there are at least three primary ways we can gain and grow in that wisdom that we want to consider this morning. And the first one is this: we need to have the proper attitude. and most importantly, the proper attitude toward God. Proverbs 9:10, remember Solomon said, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of what? Wisdom. A proverb presumes two things. Number one, that God exists, and number two, that He's the source of wisdom. And the truth is, it really doesn't matter how many academic degrees we may have, we can only find true wisdom through a relationship with God. We can become wise by following the way of wisdom, which is the way of Jesus. And it all begins by making Him the center of our lives. Second thing he says is this: we need to search for wisdom. In fact, turn to Proverbs 2. Really throughout the book of Proverbs, we're encouraged over and over again to search diligently for wisdom. It really kind of like searching for a buried treasure. In Proverbs 2, he's talking about wisdom, the pursuit of it. We know that because verse 2 says, make your ear attentive to wisdom, incline your heart to understanding. Verse 4, if you seek her, her's the wisdom, as silver, and search for her as for hidden treasures, then you'll discern the fear of the Lord and the discover of the knowledge of God. So how do we go about searching for this wisdom? Obviously we've got to look for it, don't we? Solomon urged us to in Proverbs, if you keep reading through all of this, he says, you know what? Look at the foolish people and learn what to avoid. And then you look to the wise people and you find out what we need to embrace. But then he goes on, he says, you know what, you got to be able to listen to those who are wise. Solomon talks about, in these first 4 chapters, you get the impression that he's walking the streets saying to his son, you know what, see that, do that. See that, don't do that. In fact, back in chapter 1, verse 20, he says, wisdom literally shouts in the streets. And then obviously we have to ask for wisdom, don't we? But when's the last time we did that? James 1:5, if anyone lacks wisdom, let him do what? Study more? Ask. Ask of God, who gives to all men generously. And it's interesting, you remember he goes on in James chapter 4, verse 2, and says this, you do not have because you do not ask. I really think there's a shortage of wisdom in our world today. There's not a lot of knowledge out there. Probably, maybe more knowledge than ever before, I don't know. But I'm not sure about wisdom. Because wisdom is God's point of view about a specific circumstance. So we need a proper attitude. We need to search for wisdom. And the obvious thing, and the third thing is, you know what? We've got to apply it. We've got to take action. What good does it to know something and not apply it? I mean, without exercising application, all the understanding and knowledge in the world are not effective. And it's kind of someone mentioned in class this morning about things being a lifelong pursuit. The search for wisdom, at least for me, it's a lifelong pursuit. And I think the reason why is because the battles we face with the devil, they're a lifelong struggle. When's the devil going to give up on us? You know what? At no point can we let our guard down. Because if we do, we can be like Eric Marsh, who was in his team, who were some of the most trained wildfire firefighters anywhere. And we see what happened to them. By letting our guard down, we can quickly be in trouble. I want you to turn for a minute to 1 Thessalonians 5. 1 Thessalonians 5. Look at, let me just read the first two verses because it's the context. Here, the Lord's return, then look at verse 6. Now as to the times and the epochs, brethren, you have no need of anything to be written to you, for you yourselves know full well. The day of the Lord is going to come like a thief in the night. Then look down to verse 6. So then, let us not sleep as others do, be alert, and be sober. I think Paul gives us three very practical tips here on maintaining this situational awareness that God's wisdom provides for us. Number one, he simply says, stay awake. Don't go to sleep. Don't sleepwalk through life. Don't think that we can get to a point in our Christianity where we're just going to coast our way into heaven. Because that principle of staying aware of our situation is very real. I mean, we can't hide our heads in the sand and think that life is just going to go right on by and just leave us alone. Because we know as Christians, the target is on our back, isn't it? And Satan is after us. Ephesians 5:15 and 16, be very careful how you live. Paul says, not as unwise, but as wise men. And then he says this, making the most of every opportunity. Stay awake. Second thing he says, verse 6, stay alert. I mean, that's a thing that runs throughout the Bible. Jesus told his disciples in Luke 21:36, keep on alert at all times. Remember Peter says in 1 Peter 5:8, be on the alert. Third thing he says is stay serious, stay sober, stay level-headed, stay self-controlled, however we want to put those words. Let me close with this. Vice President Mike Pence delivered a graduation speech to a Christian college, and I want to read you part of what he said. Throughout most of American history, it's been pretty easy to call yourself a Christian. It didn't even occur to people that you might be shunned or ridiculed for defending the teaching of the Bible. But things are different now. Some of the loudest voices for tolerance today have little tolerance for traditional Christian beliefs. So as you go about your daily life, be ready, because you're going to be asked to tolerate things that violate your faith. You're going to be asked to bow down to the idols of popular culture. So you need to prepare your minds for action. If you need to be prepared to meet opposition. So as you strive for greatness, know that you will face challenges. You will face opposition. And he closes it by this and says, just know this. If like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you end up in the fire, there will be another in the fire with you. You know, he's telling those students, stay awake, stay hopeful, stay serious. And I really believe if we will do that, we can have the wisdom we need to have the situational awareness to live in this world that's growing increasingly ungodly. Let's do more than survive. Let's thrive. Wayne, come lead us in a song. If you need to come, why don't you stand and sing?
Savior, He can move the mountains. My God is mighty to save. He is mighty to save.